Welcome back. We will now be looking at the last topic for this session, which is basically the ability to do RFC lookups from your PI message mappings. What do we mean by lookup? Let's take an example, right? Let's assume that in PI, while the data says as first name, your business tells you that the user ID is going to be passed here. And sorry, I'm just going. So this is our file to file scenario, and your business comes into you and tells you that for the name field, the first name is only going to contain your SAP user ID, and once you have the SAP user ID, you need to make a call to your SAP backend, make an RFC call to BAPI user get detail, get the first name and the last name out of that RFC call, and then pass the concatenated output of the first name and the last name to this particular field. Basically, what I mean by that is, the first name is going to be user PI15. The last name is here, in this case, let's say admin. And now, instead of you passing the user ID, you need to make a call to SAP and get the corresponding first name for that user and the last name for that user using an RFC call. So PI enables you to do an RFC lookup, these kind of message mapping, where you're going to enhance the data by doing an additional lookup call is basically called an RFC lookup. And to do that, let's go ahead again into the conversions tab, and in the conversions you see there's something called JDBC lookup and something called RFC lookup. So we are going to do an RFC lookup. So I'm going to drag the RFC lookup here, and now let's start looking at how do we use this RFC lookup, right? So when I double click on the RFC lookup, it's asking me, first thing, no suitable parameter found, define a new parameter of type channel first. All right, we will look at that, and so let's cancel that and then go to the signature tab, right? And here I'll close this. Here we need to define a new parameter of type RFC. So I'll say RFC channel. Okay, I'll call it as RFC channel. Type, I'll say adapter, and now once I say adapter, I can use a selection help here and I can select RFC, right? So now I'm done with that. I told that the parameter is called RFC, so I go back to my definition. All right, and now again in my conversions I'm dragging my RFC lookup parameter. Perfect. Now I can go ahead and down here I can select the RFC. So I need to define a parameter of type adapter and type RFC. That's the first thing I need to do, and once I do that, in my RFC lookup I can select the type as communication channel and I can select my RFC channel parameter. Next I need to select an RFC module. I use my selection help, I see the BAPI user get detail and BAPI user existence check. Basically make sure that in your software component under imported object your BAPIs are imported. In our case we had imported the BAPI user get detail for our HTTP to RFC scenario, and hence I'm using the BAPI user get detail out here, and I'm saying apply. Okay, I'm selecting the BAPI user get detail, saying apply, and now it's going to ask you to add the input and the output field. So let me drag this, let me make this a little bigger. Yeah, perfect. Okay, I'm going to go in here, select username and click on the plus sign. So the username is added here. Okay, and what do I need from the response? I need from the response the first name. I click on first name. I need the last name. I click on the last name. All right, perfect. And then I click on OK. So now what is the input to my RFC lookup? It's going to be the first name field, which is actually going to contain my user ID. I'm going passing that, and my output contains my first name and my last name. So that is going to be the output here. I'm going to concatenate my first name and my last name. All right, I'm deleting it. So my RFC lookup now becomes a function where it takes an input as username. It gives me two outputs, first name and last name, and I'm concatenating those first name and last name and putting them into the name field. All right, with that our change is done. My RFC lookup mapping change is done. Similarly, we need to go into the operation mapping, and in the operation mapping, as we did for the parameterized mapping, I go into the parameter and I define a new parameter called RFC channel, right? It is of type adapter, right? and I select the adapter here of type RFC and I say apply and I click on save. Next, again we need to do the binding. It's going to ask me what is the RFC channel, and I'm selecting my RFC channel and saying alright, I'm done with my operation mapping as well. Now let's go ahead and test them standalone. So when I go into my test tab, I go into my parameters. I can now see the two new parameters here, but before that, alright, let's go into my parameters and just give the concat parameter, and for my RFC channel it is now showing a selection help, and it shows me all the RFC channels that I have defined in my integration directory. So what is this? This is the channel that we defined for our SOAP to RFC scenario. So I'm going to use this and say apply. Right now I'm going to go in and say execute. Let's go into my document. I haven't changed my input data, so I'm now going to say username as user PI 15 and this user ID as admin. Remember, the input is first name field contains the SAP user ID, and when I give that, let's see what happens. Perfect. And you see somewhere the admin have now changed to Narasimha, a name called Narasimha, because in ECC, if I go to my ECC system, okay, cancel. I go to SU01, I go to admin user and I say display. Still loading. Okay, this should not have taken so long. Something wrong with the SAP system. I think the session is logged off, or something's gone wrong with my network. While that is loading, so what I wanted to show was, unfortunately my SAP system is taking too long. What I wanted to show was that it will bring in the last name. Alright, so let's go ahead and activate our changes. And after I activate our change, my change is activated. And after I activate our change, I'm going to go into operation, my configuration. I'm going to go to my interface determination. Let's close. Alright. Let's go into interface determination. Let me open my interface determination. It's under file to file 00. I'm opening my interface determination, and you see now the RFC channel is also being requested. So I'm now going to pass my RFC channel here. I'm going to select EH5CLNT SOAP to RFC RFC 00. That's the RFC channel that we created for my SOAP to RFC lookup, and now I'm going to activate my change. Alright, now let's go ahead and upload my file. Okay, something's wrong with my SAP system, so I'm going to close my SAP system and log in and launch a new session. Okay, so let's launch a new session. I'm terminating that logon. Alright, good. Okay, now I'm going to CG3Z and uploading my file. Alright, so I don't need this, don't save. I need my path, and my CG3Z node is here. Alright, I go here, copy this, put the CG3Z here, file to file XML. No, this is my target file, so I go here and I get my input file. No, but before I upload it, I need to make sure in my input file, my file contains my user IDs, right? So let's go here, file to file. I'll edit it with Notepad, and here I'm going to change the John to user PI 15 and Jane to admin. Save. After I save my file, I'm going to upload my file, and now that my file is uploaded, I'm going to go into communication channel monitor and start and stop my channel. The name of my channel is file to file sender 00, so I'm going into communication channel monitor and I'm going to start and stop my channel. Okay, I'm into go. I'm stopping my channel, I'm starting my channel, and now my channel has started. So let's go into monitoring. I'm going into SXMB Moni. I'm going to go refresh, and Hopefully things are working fine. I go here and you see the admin has been changed with Narasimha, and the last user did not exist, and that's why it has just a hash, because it does not contain, the user does not exist in SAP. Alright, perfect. So this is what we did. We did an RFC lookup. Now let's monitor the status of the RFC channel as well. So what was the name of the RFC channel? It is this guy, right? So I go here and I say execute, and you see here for the same message ID you have 3 messages. This is the message ID because there were 3 inputs, there were 3 usernames, and it made 3 RFC calls, got the response and concatenated the first name, last name, and gave it back as the output. Let's do the last thing. We are now going to go into our message mapping and do it the same for the integrated configuration, right? So let's close this mapping. Let's go to our file to file ICO. I'm going to go into message mapping and I'm going to repeat what we did. So I'm going to go into my enhanced mode, pop out, edit mode. The first thing I've got to do is, sorry, this is the wrong mapping I've opened, my bad. I'm going to go into file to file ICO 00. I'm going into my message mapping. Okay, this is the right mapping. I'll go here into my edit mode. So this is my file to file mapping. I'm in my edit mode. I go to the signature and I'm going to add a new thing called RFC. I'll just call it RFC underscore MM. Okay, it is of type adapter, and I'm going to select that adapter type as RFC. Alright, I've done that. Now I go into definition, my message mapping's definition, and here now I'm going into conversions. Okay, I'm going to select RFC lookup. And for my RFC lookup, the first thing I'm going to select is RFC underscore MM. I'm going to select the RFC module, and what I'm going to do is, instead of using BAPI user get detail, let's do a BAPI user existence check here, right? So I'm saying BAPI user existence check. It's going to ask for a username as an input. I'm going to say this is my mapping for the input. Alright, and it's going to come back with an output that says, is this the output of the mapping? So let's select this message here and add that here and say OK, right? So I'm going to pass my username as the input here, and the output of the RFC lookup is going to get concatenated here. So instead of using BAPI user get details, I've used BAPI user existence check. Let's go ahead and test it, and for testing it, I'm going to give a delimiter parameter as hash, and I'm going to go in RFC MM. I'm going to select my SOAP to RFC scenario communication channel and then I'm going to go into my document. Let's just give one username that exists. I'm going to say the username as admin and execute, right? And let's look at the output. User admin exists. Perfect. Let's go ahead now to our operation mapping. Make the same change to our operation mapping. We are going to go into operation mapping, define a parameter for our operation mapping. I'm going to call it RFC underscore OM, and with that I'm going to select the type as adapter, and once I've done that, I'm selecting is of type RFC and then saving it, right? I also have to do a band binding, so the RFC MM has to be mapped to RFC OM, and that is done. Save, go to your change list, activate all your changes. My message mapping and this is activated. Now once my activation is done, I'm going into my configuration. I'm going to my file to file ICO. I'm going to close everything else. I'm going to my integrated configuration, and within that, in my receiver interfaces tab, it's now going to ask me for what is my RFC channel, and I'm going to select CC SOAP to RFC receiver, and I'm going to apply and save. Now that I've done that, I'm activating my integrated configuration, and that is also done. Right, now let's go ahead and upload my file. It's going to be called, but before that I need to just add a username that exists. So I'm going to go into file to file ICO. Where's my file to file ICO? Here. I'm going to edit. I'm going to put the first name as, say, user PI 15. Save, and now that I've saved it, I'm going to call file to file ICO, file to file ICO and upload my file. Right, now that I've uploaded my file, I'm going to go ahead and just make sure start and stop my channel so that my file gets picked up faster, so that we don't have to wait to see this execution. I go into file to file, I say execute, I say go, and I stop my interface, I start my interface, and then we go in and look for the final output in AL11. I refresh, my 7th file is available here, and I get the message user PI exists. Let's see for the other users, it should say they do not exist. User Jane does not exist along with Doe, and so on. So with this, we come to the end of this session where we have done parameterized mappings. Parameterized mapping can be used in both message mapping, Java mapping, and XSLT mapping. We saw an example of parameterized mapping where we used it in our message mapping. Alright, and we also saw lookups where we did an RFC lookup. Similarly, there is a JDBC lookup that is also supported, where you can make a lookup to a database table and pull the data back. Alright, with this we come to the end of this session, and we shall see you again in the next session.